Formula One heads to Budapest, Hungary, and round 11 to the Hungaroring. Welcome back to the Formation Lap with Todd and Brad, regular guys, elite racing. And welcome back to another week. As I mentioned, round 11, the last race before we have about a 3 or 4 week break, the summer break as Formula One and the FIA call it. But this is a very, very important race. It's truly the halfway point of the season, and a lot's going to be told, and it's going to leave us a lot of questions to be answered in the final 11 races or so. So Todd, I'll welcome you in here. Got an exciting race here in Hungary, a interesting track, a track that's different than the past couple we've been at, but looking forward to another great week before we break for the summer here.
Yeah, Brad, I'm excited about it, and I wish we could get over there.
I feel like we say that every week.
I know. My daughter made it to Budapest.
She did.
2018 or something. I don't think she made it to the track.
Before she met me.
Yeah, before she met you, and she ate the chocolates and whatever, so she wasn't thinking F1. But yeah, I'm excited. It's halfway through, and we get a break. And,
absolutely.
You know, a little bit about that break is, you know, as we said before, the teams do nothing. They can't do anything. And so all work that's being done on the cars and strategy is done. And so this is going to be an exciting race. And I think because it's halfway through, Brad, you know, we're talking about that the constructors, they want to, you know, get momentum, and the drivers want to keep it up, and they want to go to the break with something to brag about, you know, so, you know, I'm excited about it.
And I was reading a couple articles, and it's been really unusual because we started out with those 3 races in Australia, China, and Japan, and then we had that month break because of what was happening in the world. And the driver said now that we've had 6 races in 8 weeks, they just now feel like they're starting to get a little bit of a rhythm.
And then we're breaking.
And then here we go on another break. It's the way things work out. So anyway, let's jump out to, as we start off all of our previews, where we are so far. And Todd, as you know, we can see there in the standings, Kimi remains on top. And we talked about this on our review, but what a drive he had in Spa. We both said it. I know you kind of led off our episode. It was a championship drive out of Kimi.
Exactly.
You know, he had some stuff to overcome with some unfortunate virtual safety cars. Some drivers, including Charles, were trying to undercut him, and Kimi really had to make that winning pass there kind of late in the race, and then hold off Charles. He just didn't scoot on down the road like we've seen him. And he had a really good one. Your guy Lewis jumped back into second place. Lewis had an okay Belgian Grand Prix, not his best. And then, of course, we talked about this, but George loses second place. He loses more points to Kimi as he wrecks in about the 3rd corner there in Spa. So that's where we're at so far as the Drivers' Championship.
Yeah, and Brad, I'm with you because, you know, Kimi being 19 years old, as we talked in the review, he drove champion because he had everybody breathing down his neck. Even though he knew his teammate was out.
Right.
Man, this is it. And it was very impressive. And, you know, someone that can make that car do what it's doing, and George can't.
Right.
We talked a little bit about it, but, you know, it's an exciting, getting right up to the break. I mean, if you look at it here, you know, Lewis could get closer if he pulls it, and we're going to talk about it, but Lewis owns this track.
Yes. Yep.
And so, you know, what if he gets another couple of wins, and, you know, it could get really tight before we get here. And then the constructors, you know, Ferrari is chipping away.
Yes, they are.
Chipping away. And if George and Kimi, you know, folks, if they keep breaking down or whatever, Ferrari is just, it's like that little chihuahua.
Yeah.
They're nipping at the heels, and they're coming.
And, you know, we talked about, you know, we've had with this European, you know, kind of schedule we've had ever since Monaco, you know, the 6 races in 8 weeks, you know, and I need to go back and look, but how many times in those races, and like I said, I need to look, has Mercedes actually scored both drivers in the points? I mean, because you take into account Monaco, George wasn't.
It's been about 4 races.
Silverstone, Kimi wasn't. Belgium. So there's been, combine all those things, and like you said, Ferrari, it's a slow chip, but bottom line, if Lewis and Charles keep scoring points, and if they keep getting P1s, they're slowly chipping away, and it's going to make the constructors really, really interesting. You know, we're potentially looking, if this pace keeps up, which, you know, there's no reason to think it might, we're going to be looking at a really interesting, like, last 5 or 6 races.
Yeah, and Brad, I think, you know, some of us at the beginning of the year were like, oh, it's just going to be a runaway.
Yeah.
And then it kind of slowed down. We had a break, like you said, but then we finally have got some exciting things to talk about. And, Formula One finally got revved up, like you say, and we've not seen any wet tires. So, but all of a sudden now we're going to take a break.
Right.
We're taking a break. But, so let's talk about the track.
Yeah.
I mean, Brad, a lot of people call this Monaco without walls. And folks, what that means is there's no long straights. And so this is a technical drive for the drivers because it's curve after curve after curve after curve, but no fast speeds.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to really help Ferrari and some others that are good at the cornering. But yeah, this track is, right in the heart of Budapest. It's a bowl.
Beautiful setting.
Yeah, it's a bowl, and they'll make what 70 laps, I think.
70,
to where we were 44.
Right. So
last week. What do you think about it?
Yeah, a little bit shorter. And you mentioned it. It's we're going to see more passing than Monaco, but it's not usually a track that has a ton of passing. You can see the start finish line is really our only straight. So you've got to be prepared to pass there. You've got to make up your time in these corners. And one thing that I was reading that the drivers focus on is, Todd, it's one of these tracks that you've got to be sharp and on time and in the right position with your car in one corner because you got to anticipate the next corner.
That's right.
So it is technical. It's going to be one that track evolution is going to be key. There's going to be some parts that put a strain on the tires, others that's not. So that's going to be really interesting. And saying that, though, just kind of reading the preview, reading some different articles and previews, I expect for the race we're going to see the mediums and hards. We probably not going to see the soft other than qualifying, or maybe if we have a late safety car or something like that. But it's going to be interesting. Something else that jumped out to me is, and this data is out of the last 8 races here in Hungary, like a 13% chance for a safety car, and very, very low for a virtual safety car. So that's good news. I mean, I think we all want to see a good, good clean racing. But the chances of the race, being stopped and under that safety car are very, very low.
Yeah. And Brad, I mean, I've talked about it in the past. Some of the roads I used to drive in the country, you knew these curves, and what you do, you'd hit the apex just right and get to the next. Of course, I didn't have another 20 cars on the road, and I didn't have us going at 200 miles an hour. But, I think what's interesting, too, is this track had 65 overtakes last year.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is opportunity where Monaco had minimal, right? And so even though this is Monaco without walls, there's opportunity, I think, with the new cars, we're going to see some of that too.
And Todd, you mentioned this is Monaco, and that's what the comparison's been. And teams are going to set up their aero packages exactly like Monaco. It's not as tight, and you hit the nail on the head. It's not the walls, but drivers say it feels kind of smaller.
It does.
And so that's a complete opposite to what we saw in the longest track of the year last year was Spa. So Todd, hit on a few points here. Why does the Hungarian Grand Prix matter?
Well, yeah, one of them was this is the last before the break.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to go and make a statement, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I definitely want to make a statement, and I want to be able to set my car up so that I can do everything because, the track positioning, and we always say qualifying, but this is one of them that you have to qualify.
Yeah.
Well, and most of them he won from the front row.
Mm-hmm.
There was Lewis has been on the pole a lot, but Lando won, off the second. So it's really where you position in that qualifying. Not that it hasn't been in the other, but as you've seen in some of the other races, Brad, the tracks, some of those guys are making 4 places up before they get to the first curve.
Right.
Well, this one's not going to be quite the same, and I think it is. And right now, Europe is hot, and so what's it going to do to the tires?
Absolutely.
And what does it matter? Like you said, they're going to test what they did in Monaco. And folks, if you listen to some of our break sessions, we'll probably talk a little bit about the strategy because they were probably driving in Monaco, getting ready for Hungary,
right?
With some upgrades,
right.
So I think it matters because of what's the championship of what's going on, and with Kimi, another one that he can put on his belt and notch it. But what do you think about it, Brad?
Yeah, something else. Just thinking about. I think it's unusual. Looking at some articles, so many guys. So many drivers in the past have won their first race here, which is kind of cool. And a guy that we still get on the grid, Esteban Ocon, won back here in 2021. Now that was a crazy race. It had some early wrecks and had some had some weather, but this is a course that things can we threw out those safety car and virtual safety car numbers throughout that. Last year there were 68 overtakes, something like that. So we say that there's not a lot, but it's also a course that it can get crazy, it can get hectic, and I agree with you. It's going to be interesting. Also, just thinking about before the summer break, we've got my team McLaren coming with a whole bunch of upgrades. And Todd, I want to talk about this in a second. We're going to talk about this in a second, but Aston Martin's basically throwing out a whole new car, so this is going to be a really good picture of this is where we were before the summer break, and it's going to give us a good picture of what the final 11 races look like.
I think you're right, because a lot of them are going to say that this mattered because we did this, and this before we took a break. And, like I said, Aston Martin, they're expecting a 3-second gain.
Which is unbelievable.
Yeah, in Formula One, folks, that's a lot, right?
That's
because
huge.
they're in hundredths of a second when
Right.
so we'll see what happens. And I think, Lewis, he's been on pole the most, he's won the most. So why does this matter? Continue to make his statement,
Absolutely.
right? And Silverstone he owned, and of course he wanted to do that. This could be a testament too of that. But
absolutely,
it's just going to be interesting to see. And right now there's no rain in the forecast, so
good news.
We'll see what happens. But Brad, what about the battle of the week here? What are we going to see?
A team that I just mentioned, and Todd, Aston Martin, and I kind of wanted to hit on them. They're the matchup that I'm kind of watching out for, because I look at the midfield this year as kind of being three-tiered. It's been Racing Bulls and Alpine, and then it's been Audi, Haas, and Williams, and then that bottom tier has been Cadillac and Aston Martin.
Well, Aston Martin doesn't even count.
I was about to say Aston Martin may be below Cadillac a little bit, and that's no disrespect, but you hear the Aston Martin drivers in Lance Stroll and Fernando, they will admit they just don't have the car, and some other guys. But Adrian Newby, who is just a legend, really made Red Bull what Red Bull was and is. He moved over to Aston Martin as the lead engineer there. Was the team principal for a while, but stepped away. But they have got just about a completely new car. So my kind of matchup is, if Aston Martin is saying what we think is going to happen, where it could be 3 seconds. Todd, I don't think they're going to be on the level of Racing Bulls and Alpines, but they may be in that tier with Audi, Haas, and possibly
10th,
past
11th,
Williams,
12th place.
And then Todd, we talked about some of these weekends where you see some drivers from the top 4 teams being Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, and Red Bull. If they don't score points, that gives a chance for some of those midfield teams. So I'm watching Aston Martin. I don't think they're going to jump into the points, but hey, if Stroll and Alonso come out and they're anywhere from 11th to 14th, the midfield teams are going to sweat a little bit.
They are, and I think you're right, and good points, because Aston Martin, those two guys really haven't been racing.
No,
they've been just test driving.
Exactly.
And so that's a challenge in my opinion. They're going to get something exciting. Are they going to go out and race? And I think they will, and we'll see what happens on that. I mean, good for them, right? I mean, Newby, he's from what I've heard and folks, what I've seen is, if you don't, stay on top of him, he will take his time to make the car perfect. Perfect. Yeah. And oh, by the way, there's a race, so we'll see what happens here. But, I think also with Ferrari, some of the advantages here and fair matchup between these two guys. I think McLaren and Ferrari are going to be at it. Mercedes is going to be there, yes.
Right.
But your guys showed up last week. Lando got it, and then Oscars will get some more. Ferrari's getting it, and they're very good at corners. Mm-hmm. And both of these teams are. So I think they're going to be in. Then you said the midfield. But, some of the key challenges is passing, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
And getting those curves just right. We saw Lewis last week. He knew that course like the back of his hand and hit just one little spot. Off he went, And so if you can't get this right, or you get too comfortable, I think that's going to be a challenge, in the tires being hot. That's it's going to be different.
You bring up such a good point, because I mean we've heard all week, and you're going to continue to hear it. You've got to hit one corner perfect to set yourself up for the next corner. If you're off on this corner, that means you're going to be off on the next corner, and you're going to be losing
2 or 3
precious seconds.
Exactly.
So and Todd, you mentioned, while overtaking's at a premium, if you're in front of a guy that he's missing his marks, that's going to be not an easy pass, but it's going to be an easier pass than if he wasn't. So that is a good point. Todd, Who's a driver that you're watching out for this week?
Well, I want to watch Lawson.
Yeah.
Because Limlad had
the upgrade, right?
And folks, if remember, they played it out in qualifying in Silverstone to get the upgrade for last week. Well, Lawson gets it. So I kind of want to watch and see what because he's been ahead of Limlad the whole time. Now Limlad did well, don't get me wrong, and part of it because he had that. So I'm watching them, and I'm definitely watching the Aston Martins to see, because I think the two of them want to at least get into 1 point. Or beat, whatever. So that's the three drivers I'm watching. I'm going to see what Oscar does too, because he gets some additional upgrades as we go in. But the rest of them watching. That's something I'm going to be watching. The cameras might be watching the front guys, but I want to watch the mid guys. And Brad, who are you going to watch?
You stole my thunder a little bit there. I'm watching my guy Oscar. No, Lando had the upgraded car. He had the new. He finally had the new Mercedes power unit. Mercedes took long enough to get it to us, but anyway, that's the point. Yeah, I'm watching Oscar. Oscar likes this track. This is a track that it just kind of, I feel like it suits Oscar. I'm really watching Oscar this week. I mean, I'm going to talk about in a second my excitement for this weekend, but I'm watching Oscar. I'm watching Isaac Hadjar again. Like, I'm telling you, he's in some good form right now, and I'm watching him. The other guy I'm watching is Ollie. I'm so high on Ollie, but just kind of
stuck.
He's been stuck. And Todd, I know last year we were so impressed with those first couple races because he was passing. I'm waiting for Ollie to have that impression, because this is a guy that people are saying, he might be kind of the next step to take over for Lewis at Ferrari. And not trying to get into that, but some of that talk has died down a little bit. So I'm interested to see what Ollie does. One final thing I mentioned before we continue, Todd. This is going to be an interesting weekend. Obviously, before the summer break, in free practice 1, we have 5 reserve drivers that are going to have a chance to drive. Okay. So if you enjoy seeing some guys. If you enjoy seeing some guys, just get to put on some laps in these cars, watch that. If there's any IndyCar fans out there, Colton Herta is going to get a chance to drive. So that's always interesting. And ladies and gentlemen, all this simply means is, these guys have to have certain points for their super license to have the chance to work into Formula One. So these weekends give them a chance to do that, where there's no sprint race, there's all 3 sessions. So some of these teams will give reserve drivers a chance to get in the car and get a feel for what a Formula One car is.
And Brad, I mean, on that, with the battles, Lawson is one of those guys that was a reserve driver, about 4 years ago? And one of his, the drivers got sick. He had to go in and race that weekend. And so, folks, that's kind of what happens. These reserve drivers come in. I mean, when Carlos had appendix, itis.
Ollie jumped in.
Ollie jumped in, and then Fernando, didn't he break his wrist? Or no, it was Stroll. Someone jumped in, so that's what those reserve drivers do, and we'll see. But, I mean, at the end here, Brad, what's at stake, as we close out this, 10, 11 races, what's at stake?
I think the biggest thing at stake, and this is going to be a 2-point for me, is Ferrari could chip away at that lead even more on Mercedes, and George really could go into the summer break questioning what's next for him in his future. I mean, this guy, he has no confidence.
Yeah.
I'm not saying George needs a win. To me, George needs a podium this weekend, Todd. I mean, I think if we go into the summer break here for this 3 or 4 weeks of just talking, which that's what we do, but just talking, all the F1 media, it's going to be, does George even deserve to be in that Mercedes seat because he's been in such poor form? That's a big battle. That's a big battle. It's just George versus himself versus Kimi versus Ferrari. That's a big one to me. What about for you? What's at stake?
Well, and I was thinking about George, and it's not all George's issue, right? Because George and Kimi are having some software problems. And so what that's doing is causing the engines not to work right. But guess what? Kimmy's doing okay.
Kimmy's overcoming it. That's right.
So did someone put a bug in George's, and that works. But I'm thinking about George. And then I think Ferrari is that momentum that they've been building has, got to continue. And I think they're coming with it full-fledged.
Yeah.
And then your guys, I think they're going to now show up on the playground a little bit. And This is going to be a great.
It's going to be
great one.
It's going to be great. All right, so Red versus Papaya. Todd, what are you expecting out of Lewis and Charles? Both these guys have been in great form, especially Charles the last 2 races. But what are you expecting out of your Scuderia Ferrari?
Yeah,
guys?
I think Brad, because of this track, I think they're going to shine.
I agree,
and I think they have done their testing and they've got some of these upgrades. Hadn't done everything exactly, but Charles has said, "I have a new." Breath of fresh air.
Right.
And I figured some things out, and he didn't get left behind last. So I think he's going to shine, and he loves this because Monaco, this is just like his backyard.
That's exactly right.
But then Lewis is very technical, and he'll figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And I think if they can use their talents and skills well, I think there's going to be a good chance that Ferrari's going to be, both of them could be on the podium again. And, I'm kind of excited. I've been enjoying seeing it. But, I think that's what's going to happen. And I think they've got some of the bad behind them, even though we've had a couple of wrecks and didn't finish. I think they've got that momentum. And Fred, I think, has done a great job at continuing. And if you just look at the factory staff, man, they are on fire.
And,
so, yeah.
I know we talked about this last week, but Fred is just great. But between Fred and Lewis, it's been just a complete culture change at Ferrari. I mean, I know that's big in American sports when you have a new coach or a new manager or a new player, new star player come in. It's a whole culture change. And we're seeing the same thing at Ferrari with one of the greatest of all time in Lewis and then Fred. It's a culture change at Ferrari.
Fred knew about it about 18 months ago. He said it's going to take a while. And so we're seeing some of that.
You're seeing the fruit finally, come.
Same thing happened to your team, a few years back.
Right.
They finally have come from almost last.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Brad, what do you think? Papaya.
Super excited, and I still believe we're just the tiniest bit behind Ferrari. I still think we're behind Mercedes, but super excited. Lando was unbelievable last week, and that was even without some of the upgrades. He had the new power unit. Once again, Mercedes finally sent it, but that's a conversation on another day. But no, a new floor, a new upgraded floor coming, some new aerodynamic packages coming. I'm super excited. I'm expecting one guy to be on the podium, and then I'm hoping 4th or 5th for the other guy. Like I said, I'm watching Oscar closely, but I'm going to tell you, I know Lando gets a lot of grief because it took him years and years to get his first win, and some people think he was kind of gifted the championship last year. Look, I'm here to, that's fine if you have that opinion, but the reality is, every championship team, player, whatever, there's a little bit of luck involved. And Lando did get lucky at some points last year, but the bottom line is this car has been, just not very good. It was good in Miami, and then really since Miami, this car has not been that great. And Lando has manufactured some points, and I am fully convinced, unfortunately, he has a really bad pit stop, and I think they should have pitted him under the virtual safety car last week. Lando, to me, is on the podium last week. He qualified P3.
Yep.
Lando's in really good form, and I'm excited for Oscar this weekend. I mentioned it, but I'm very optimistic about my guys, and especially, I think they're going to be able to take some good data away from this race, and once we get back from summer break, we're going to get right back into it with a couple more European circuits, but I'm really excited. There is going to be, and I'm forgetting the driver's name, but Oscar will not be in practice one, so it's also going to be good to see another guy drive it. But I'm excited about the upgrades. We've been waiting on these. Last week was encouraging. This is the one I've circled because it's going to show if McLaren has kind of regained their form from really the last 2 years. We've won at this track the last 2 years, and I'm excited.
Brad, folks, can you see Brad's excited? He finally got excited. He hadn't had much to cheer about lately.
No, I had a great weekend with Miami, and it's been. Look, I love F1, but when your team's struggling, it puts you down a little bit. But I'm excited. All right, so let's.
And I've had the crazies of Ferrari strategy,
exactly like that. Exactly. So, all right, Todd. So let's get into it. I want to first off start before we get to 3, 2, 1. Your pole position, your biggest surprise, and your driver to watch.
Yeah, I think Kimi's going to be on pole.
Okay.
And I'm going to watch Lawson.
I like it.
I kind of like Isaac too, but I think Lawson. We'll see what happens, and then I think the biggest surprise is going to be Aston Martin and see.
Do you think points, or do you think they're just in up there?
I think Fernando will. I think he'll get there.
I like that.
I think he's going to figure it because he's a smart racer.
Yeah, he is.
He just hadn't had the equipment.
No.
And so, yeah, that's where we're going. What about you, Brad?
Pole position, I'm gonna go Charles in pole position. I think this is you mentioned. I think this is a track that just really suits Mercedes. So I'm going to go Charles in pole position. My biggest surprise, I'm watching out for Gabby Bortoleto again.
Oh yeah,
with Audi. He really impressed me last week. I don't know. Audi has just been kind of quietly flying under the radar, and I don't think they're quite at that tier of Racing Bulls and Alpine, but kind of watching out for him as my biggest surprise. And then my driver to watch, I know I mentioned him, but I'm going Isaac again. I don't know, just something about this guy. I like him. He started back at the grid last week. He had to start in the pit lane. He's just got that killer instinct about him. And we've said it, but Max has finally got a good teammate with him. I agree. Checo Perez was good for a while, and then he fell off. And unfortunately, we really both like Liam, but Liam just couldn't quite figure it out. But he also wasn't given enough time. But I'm watching for Isaac this week. So, all right, Todd, P3, P2, P1 here.
All right, so P3 is going to be Lando.
Okay, I think
he's going to squeeze it out, and then it's going to be this is going to be crazy. Charles. And then I think Lewis is going to pull it off.
So where's Kimi finished?
I think he's going to get squeezed out.
Wow, okay.
So I think these two guys are going to get up front and control it.
I like it.
Why not, right?
I do want to ask you real quick, if that's your podium, where do you see George?
George would probably come in 5th.
Okay, and I mean it's not a bad result for George, but that's not going to help us. It's not going to help his confidence.
Him and Max will be right there.
Yeah.
I just don't think George is going to pull it back off.
And Todd, real quick, I am interested. We talked about Ferrari's got it, McLaren's coming with upgrades. Red Bull's been good, but I'm interested to see what they do as well.
Well, they manufactured in states in the baseball. Sometimes you manufacture a score.
Exactly.
You get an out. You do a pop out. So I think, and hey, hats off to him because Max has figured out how to do it.
Absolutely.
So what about you?
My P3 lines up with you. I'm going Lando.
All right.
I'm going Lando. I'm going Kimi in P2, and I'm going Charles in P1. And I think Lewis is probably there in 4th. I may be a little overexcited from McLaren, but we'll find out. That's why this prediction. I'll eat crow on Monday if I'm wrong. But I don't know, Todd. I like the form that Charles is in.
Yeah.
I just think I think this is a track that is going to suit him. And it's going to be exciting.
We'll see. I mean, Lewis owns it, right? So that's why I'm leaning. Kimi, we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be, and I think that's just the thing is we're still figuring out these cars, and with all this development, it's just kind of unpredictable to know of. We've seen it. McLaren came with upgrades in Miami, and we were great. And then Ferrari came with upgrades a couple races later, and they were great. And then Red Bull, and they were great. So it's truly just been a Mercedes versus the other 3 teams figuring out the development and everything. So I finally feels like it's starting to flatten out, and the cream's going to rise to the top.
Yeah, and I think that's what I said with Ferrari. That's why I picked those two because their strategy. They know these courses, and if they can block, and you never know. So we'll see what happens. But we'll see what happens on Monday.
Absolutely,
but Brad,
it's going to be a good one. Yeah, thank you once again for joining us here on the Formation Lap. Give this video a like, and please share your comments with us of what you expect in Budapest, Hungary this weekend. Should be a great race. Of course, no sprint race this weekend, just 3 practices qualifying, and then the race on Sunday. Share this video with your family, your friends, your Formula One buddies. We appreciate it. Please subscribe. We're having a great time doing this. Can't believe that we're halfway through the season, but we've loved getting to be with you and bringing you Formula One content. Stay tuned. We've got some good things coming in the summer break, at least 2 to 3 episodes coming. So we're going to keep on bringing you Formula One content here on the Formation Lap with Todd and Brad. We'll see you Monday for our Hungary reaction video after the checkered flag. And we will see you. Enjoy the race this weekend.